You're listening to Arsenal Pass.
Ho, 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 Merry Christmas!
A flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 245 of Arsenal Pass. Hayden Dale here with Pankaj Bhojwani. As always, this week on the pod, our final retrospective for 2025. Pankaj, it is Christmas Eve for myself. It is the 23rd for you as we record. We are hurtling towards the end of the year. This will be our final pod of the year as we look back at some things that have happened during the year, some of the biggest changes of the year in Flesh and Blood before next week, our first pod of 2026, where we will start to get straight into Road to National season, including our picks for Road to National season. But before all that, Pankaj, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. A little bit lethargic during this holiday season. I've definitely been sleeping in a little bit more and just been like generally kind of tired and resting a lot, which is nice. It's been healing, I suppose. But I've got a couple of potlucks coming up this week for the holiday season. I'm really looking forward to that. One of them is with some college friends, and another one is with some Flesh and Blood friends, actually. So that'll be fun. Actually, right after this, I'm going to one after we record. We're recording on a Tuesday on the 23rd for me. And I'll be doing that. Other than that, I've been playing Assassin's Creed Mirage. I'm sort of back in like my Assassin's Creed phase a little bit, which happens about like once a year. I'm not sure why. I feel like every game is like the same game, just like reskinned. Literally. And like it's just a different, like a different background. It'll be like, oh, this one's in Baghdad, and then the previous one was, I don't know, like whichever other place. But whatever, once a year, I don't know, it's nice to just get back and just do Assassin's Creed things, I suppose. That's where I'm at. How are you doing? Christmas Eve for you?
Yeah, done all my Christmas food shop this morning. Went to the gym. It was my first day off. I was working yesterday. So, yeah, kind of just looking forward to relaxing. I've already started to feel, I just had like one piece of food this morning that I wouldn't normally eat. And I'm already feeling a little bit like, ooh, that feels heavy. There's a lot of food, there's a lot of food incoming the next couple of days. So see how I get on. But no, I'm looking forward to having a bit of downtime. Not much planned for my downtime. Like I'm not planning to catch up on any games specifically. I'd love to catch up on my backlog of movies. Actually, that's probably what I'd like to do. I watched Frankenstein last night. I watched the new Knives Out the night before. So I'm trying to catch up on some of the backlog of movies that I want to watch before the end of the year.
Was that your first time watching Glass Onion? Was it Glass Onion or talking about the... Wait, it was like an even newer one,
Wake Up
right?
Dead Man. Yeah, I think it's the best of the three. I think it's the best one so
far.
far. Yeah.
That's already out? Wait, when did that come out?
Week ago, I think.
Oh my god. Yeah. Okay, I need to watch it. I need to add that to my holiday
I think it's the best one
as well.
I think it's the best one.
Okay.
I didn't...
where did you watch it on?
Netflix.
Okay, I don't have one of those. I'll need to get a friend who has Netflix and watch with them.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy it. I think there's a real gap in the market for good whodunits, I think, and the Knives Out franchise, I think, it's fun, right? At least it's fun. So
it is fun.
But I really enjoyed this one. So, and the cast is always really strong. So anyway,
for sure, people
don't want to hear me talk about movies, Pankaj. So anything in Flesh and Blood this week?
It's Christmas. This is the sort of Christmas pod, right? And then our next pod is going to be in 2026 for RTN season. I think people are down for some downtime stuff. Like I want to catch up on my backlog of games. That's why AC Mirage is like what I'm playing right now. And I've got like Inscription, I think I want to try as well. And then there's another one which like some YouTuber I follow was talking about it, like Knights of the Vale or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Which seemed interesting. No, on the Flesh and Blood side, not much. I was just tuned in to Calling Hong Kong this past weekend. And some preliminary investigations into what I want to play for RTN season. Currently, I've got Verdance and Mario as my front runners. The problem is that both of them lose to Gravy, so I'm also kind of looking at Kasai, but I feel like Kasai loses to a lot of other things, so that's where I'm at, Flesh and Blood-wise. Anything from you this week?
Yeah, no, same. Literally same. Checked out a bit of coverage, trying to work out what I might want to play for Road to National season. Started to brew. I'm definitely... when the meta's really flat like this, I'm always excited to do a bit of brewing. And because it's Road to Nationals, I'm okay with potentially playing not the best deck. So, Slippy, Reiner. But honestly, I was just saying to you before, Pankaj, I could be keen to play like a power... Gravy's still, I think, very good. But I have more interest in playing Gravy in this form, I think, than what it looked like before. So Gravy is also interesting. Like, I enjoyed it post the previous ban, playing Gravy, infinitely more than when it was fully powered with all tipples and things like that. So it could also be an option. We'll see.
Cool. Speaking of lower power decks that I investigated, I mentioned Marlin, I think a week or two ago, and I got the Marlin beaten out of me again. So I'm probably not looking at that for RTN season, which is tragic. It's just every time I go back to the deck, I get the code beaten out of me. And I'm like, no, she needs like 2 more blue cards, 1 more red threat, and a quiver before she's playable. And then something happens, and I'll be like, oh, let me go investigate this hero again. And I come to the same conclusion. Where I'm like, again, she needs like 2 more blue cards, 1 more threat, maybe 2 more threats actually, and a quiver before she's good. And it's just, I just keep going through the cycle where I'm realizing the same thing about this freaking hero. And it's very upsetting.
Welcome to my world with Reiner, dude. Welcome to a lot of people's worlds with Riptide, for instance. Riptide players have been saying, we just need this one thing for about 7 sets, and they keep getting one thing, and it's not the one thing.
Yeah, I mean, they get like take the bait, so I feel for them for sure. I mean, I say them. I have Riptide on. I've had Riptide since Outsiders.
Sure.
Like I bought into the hero, and same thing. They give us like cards like take the bait, and I was like, okay, this is absolutely not what we need.
Hey, remember? Hey, we're looking. This is a retrospective episode. Remember looking back at 2025 when we said don't take the bait, and people took the bait. I'm like, this, you don't understand this card. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. We got some comments being like, no, you don't get it. Trust me. And it's like, brother.
How you doing?
I think Pablo put it really well.
I was going to say,
put it really well.
There you go.
It was the episode. I think you were off on your honeymoon, and I got like Pablo and Tarek Patel on, and we were talking about take the bait because it was spoiled like shortly before that, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't want to spend my cards blocking my own cards," which I was like, because the theory is you play traps on the bait token that they send at you, right? And then he's like, "Yeah, but I gave them that bait token. I don't really want to be doing that."
Check on your Riptide friends out there. Honestly, when I saw that card and I saw the discourse, I was like, oh, I've finally found a card that tells me if people are good at Flesh and Blood or not. Just with one card. And the way they understand this card.
We talk about like 1 card ones being bad. This is like a 1 card negative one.
Yeah,
Give your opponent damage. It's like, all right. Okay, dude.
News?
Yes, the news. Okay, so we had actually did have some news. There was a cosplay update that happened sometime last week where they seem to be moving away from the cosplay contest that happened at these big events and more of cosplayers being part of the event itself. Now, there's full details of it on the FabTCG website. We won't go through the entire thing. But basically, they'll be inviting cosplayers to the event, and then the cosplayers will go around, and they sort of will be involved in like bounties and stuff. Like you can you play against them in a side event, and you can get like a special bounty and stuff like that. I think you want to take photos with them, and there might be some social media thing involved as well. But I think a big thing was that there's no more cosplay contest, and I didn't know what to think of it until I saw discourse from some popular cosplayers sort of having a bit of a negative reaction to this. I think so far I don't know enough of it to have an opinion myself, but there has been some news and some discourse around this. It seems to be a little bit more controversial than I think LSS were expecting. Did you hear about it, or do you have any thoughts on this?
I saw some discourse, and I think like a lot of responses, and I think James was actually pretty vocal in replying to cosplayers who were putting their thoughts and views out there as to what it would look like. So, I mean, I feel like I'm not educated enough on it to speak on it, but I will take what the cosplayers are saying. I think they've made a commitment to like the number of cosplayers who will receive the cold foils and things like that. I guess I just don't have a lot to say until I understand it more. But I think what I would take is do you still have a good opportunity to get new people into this? Because at the end of the day, like, people join communities and TCG communities for different reasons, right? And I think Flesh and Blood has a really great cosplay community that has been around since day dot and has evolved with the game, which I think has been great. And there's been a lot of things that have evolved, to having cosplayers at the events, like you say, sort of as a part of the event. And I think that aspect is really cool. I think you create this almost sort of festival atmosphere to an event. So people come along, they come to watch the Pro Tour, they see the best players in the game playing the game, but also there's vendors there, there's special side events, there's the Learn to Play booths, there's all these things happening on the main stage, and there's the cosplayers, right, which is also a big part of it that creates the immersion. Also, just even what's around you in terms of the fixtures and things like that. So, I do think it's so important. And as long as there's ways for people to get into it, because before you could just try your hand at it, right? You could just rock up. So I think as long as there's still a good way for people to get into it, then I think that's fine. But I think that needs to still be a pathway.
I really like what you said about the festival atmosphere. It does sort of feel like a carnival of sorts, and the cosplayers are no small part of that. Actually, I think they contribute a lot to that vibe of you're like in this like almost not like Renaissance fair, but like it's like a fair basically sort of vibe going around, which is really cool.
Because now you have to put in like
we're both.
I was just say because now you have to put in like an application. From what my understanding, like if you want to be a part of it, so you have to. I think they're taking people who are well-known cosplayers to join, which is fine, but then they're also taking like emerging cosplayers, and I think how do you get into that if you've never done it before, and do you feel? I just think, if you've never gotten into it before, is there going to be a lot of interest, and it's really hard, and then you can't get into. For instance, let's say 5 people wanted to get into an event, but there's only 2 slots. But then they actually couldn't go to any other event because they're not necessarily prepared to travel. This is their local event, for instance, but there just happen to be 5 people in that location. And then you go to the next location and there's only 1 person and they get in. Then the other 5, they don't get in. One of them doesn't get in the next round either. That's my question of concern, honestly. So,
looking at the article, it does seem like they are not only focusing on top tier cosplayers. Like the invites 100%. They're giving out does include like. There's 1 top tier and then like 1 or 2 accomplished, 1 or 2 emerging.
Yeah, for sure.
So I hope they can, accomplish their goals on that front of getting new blood into the scene as well. I think it seems like they're doubling down on. We sort of saw this happening already. Like for example, in London, they had Carolina be like a big part of it. Like there was a whole social media thing where you get a picture with her and you put some hashtag, like you get something, or you get put into an entry for a giveaway or something.
Yeah.
And she went on stage for the keynote and everything. And then at Singapore, there was Rachel, right, who cosplayed as Pleiades, going up, and she had a little bit of a segment during the keynote as well. So it feels like I think they may be doubling down on sort of that aspect of it, of having them sort of as performers, if you will. Yeah. Almost like I don't know, like Disney characters or like Disneyland or something, right? So I could see it becoming something really, really cool and really, really awesome. And I think it maybe comes down to whether they can execute on this. At the same time, given that neither of us are cosplayers and we've already admitted we don't know too much about this.
Shut up.
I don't want to discount what the top player cosplayers are already saying about the lack of a contest. So there's obviously a lot more to this. But that being said, I think James did mention that this was from community feedback already. So, I mean, clearly, as with any community feedback, you're going to have 2 sides of it, right? I think we both said I don't have an opinion on either side. I could just see the vision, I think, leading more to a carnival festival vibe with the cosplayers being part of it.
I think so too.
But I could also, I think the lack of a cosplay contest I could see how that's a loss that's felt by the high tier cosplayers as well very much. It's also something they put a lot of their heart and soul
100%.
into. And maybe it's one of those ways that really gets up and coming cosplayers onto the scene. So we'll have to see how this pans out and how the execution lands, I think.
But there is, just going back to my earlier point about the right pathway, I mean, there's still the opportunity for them. If you haven't read the article, anyone can come and cosplay, which has always been the case, right? But anyone who does come and cosplay does get rewarded. So I think there's free entry to the promo events on the second day of the event, for instance. And there is going to be like a participation cosplay pack, it sounds like, whatever that is. So I think it might be a Rainbow Foil Frankie, I think it might have been. So it
says it has exclusive cards to build Frankie, which I think is interesting. Like exclusive cards in the cosplay pack, which does feel like it'll probably be valuable.
I think it's pretty cool
because it's exclusive.
But we'll see. I can understand why there might be particular feelings about it, but I think I really like that idea, like I said, of the festival vibe, and I think this does help that. So yeah. This needs to go in the 2026 retrospective.
Sure. Basically, the 2026 equivalent pod that we do this time of the year will need to include how we feel about this and how it ended up panning out.
Yeah, cool. Perfect. Anything else?
Other news, there was no World Tour Weekly this week. I mean, Margin did say on his previous episode that the next one is going to be in January, and that was the last one for the year. I just want to call that out. I was bummed there was no World Tour Weekly this week. I mean, I was expecting it, but I was still bummed.
Should we get
that's all we have for the news.
Commander Cookout. Yep. If you want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, please do so. Email us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. If you're on YouTube, you can drop your comment below on the YouTube comments, or in the YouTube comments rather. Let us know it is a Commander Cookout question though, so we know to answer your question. If you're an Arsenal Pass patron, you can go into our patrons Discord. There is a Commander Cookout section there. You can drop your questions for us, or as this individual has done, if you see us in person at an event, then you can drop us a handwritten note with your name and your question. Make sure we can read it like Ryan has done here. Very clear, very legible. Thank you, Ryan. Next event, Pankaj. Where's the next event you'll be at, just so people know?
It's going to be Columbus in a few weeks.
Mine's Brisbane. That kind of sucks. But I'll be at RTN's, so if you're a Sydney local, drop me a question. But otherwise,
when is Brisbane?
March. So, yeah.
Yeah, make it out to London. Come on.
I wish, man. I know. Anyway, we'll be at Yokohama, which is exciting. So, with Kano gone, do you think we will get another non-talented wizard or talented Kano first? So I guess the question is, do we get another non-talented wizard, or do we first get a talented Kano? That's from Ryan Hammond of, again, my favorite place, Walla Walla. Bing Bang. Shout out to you, Pankaj.
Yeah, when he gave this to me, he said, I gotta keep the Walla Walla representation up there. So shout out Ryan for that. Surely we get Adult Blaze before a Kano reprint. I mean, Blaze is right there, sort of like how we got Young Icelander first in Everfest, and then she came out in Uprising. Yeah, Young Blaze has just been chilling for a little bit, so surely we get the adult version of her before a Kano reprint. But to be honestly, I just don't know anymore with their wizard, with their vision for wizard, if you will, the design and the class identity. Like, I'm still of the opinion that the Rosetta wizards kind of feel more like Runeblades than wizards to me. Just the fact that Asylio has more attacks in it than spells, and Verdance needs to play attacks to even get a hero ability. It just feels like they're very Runebladey, rather than like wizardly. So I'm at a loss at trying to predict what they want for the wizard class, to be honest. Where you at?
I have so many questions to ask on the back of that. First of all,
let's go.
Funnily enough, there's also a Walla Walla in Australia. It's like a 5-hour drive for me. But anyway, I was just thinking about that. I have a question for you. Lightning. When you think about Lightning as a talent, what do you think of when you think of Lightning?
I think speed.
Yeah.
Like speed. So in this game, it's sort of like action points, like go again.
Mm-hmm.
Like Channel Thunderstep, for example, is that you get to like give a bunch of things.
Very playable
for
card.
Example. It's like one instant speed stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it would have been playable if Tome Veta Wind was a card, right? But anyway,
sure, true.
Instant speed comes to mind as well.
Yeah. Go again attacks comes to mind for me. I guess what I'm trying to get at, I guess, is when I think about talented wizards, I think that the way that the talent modifies the wizard class line is quite significant. To your point about it feels like Runeblades. If I think about Icelander, I think about Verdance, I think about Asylio. I actually think Alice has done a really good job of the talent being infused with the wizard class. Is it my thing? No, I really like just non-talented wizard. I think that's really interesting. So I would like to see... I think when you take a non-talented wizard, you have wizard in its purest form. And I think it's arcane, right? I think it's really enjoyable. So when you have the talented wizard, you really do dilute that. And I think that's why you feel it, because wizards are so different, the way they operate, I think, versus the talent.
So I didn't feel that with Icelander, though, despite it. I think a big thing...
Oh, I did.
I think a big thing for me, and this is a little bit like purist from me, I do admit, and I know not many people feel this way. But I think with Icelander, I like that there was... Like, some people might say, oh, you ran Wounded Bull and Fighting Spirit in Icelander. Did that feel not wizardy to you? But it felt very much like a deck-building decision that I could make. Like, I had metas, like Lexi meta, where I'm like, I have a full sideboard where I play 0 attacks, because I don't want to get boomed by Codex of Frailty, for example. And I think given that I had that option in a wizard class to play 0 attacks and still reduce my opponent's life total to 0, effectively was kind of like what made it feel very wizardy to me. And then putting the attacks in was like a deck building choice for like certain strategies, for example. Whereas with Acilio and Verdance, I don't have that option. I have to run attacks for me to, like, it's like the design of them is that you need to run attacks so that your hero doesn't function. And it's no longer a deck building choice for you to add attacks or not attacks. Like, I can't kill my opponent from 40 to 0 with pure arcane. And that just takes away a little bit of the wizard identity to me and moves it more towards like the Runeblade thing. Again, it's very purist, I know. But that is.
With Verdance?
Yeah. You can't, I mean, you literally can't have a hero ability unless you play attacks, right?
But I think that's such a, I don't know. To me, it feels like such a simplistic view to be like, attack actions versus non-attack actions. Because to me, wizards can raise creatures and like fight alongside if they channel the earth, right? So I don't know. Like the ice thing is just that there's ice also has this piece of non-attack action tied to it as a talent. I think it more so, whereas earth has a lot of attacks tied to it. So I get what you're saying about like purity of wizard, but I think the talent always has quite a, because if I think about Icelander, I'm like, there's so much ice involved, like in terms of all of the ice elements of like frostbite tokens and of hindering the opponent from being able to do what they want to do. Like Icelander has so much of that, and that's all driven from the ice side, as it had been with Ultim or Jarl or with any other ice hero. And I would say with the earth side, like I agree, it does also have a significant impact on the wizard side, but it just comes in the form of obviously decompose in the attack action. So to me, I don't really see. I think all of the talented wizards have had a really big impact from their talent, especially comparative to some other heroes where the talent you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that hero's actually talented, or the talent doesn't really have a massive impact.
Like Chaos Assassin. Actually, I think I know where actually this comes from. Now, I'm glad you brought up the Icelanders like ice cards. I think a big thing is that there just aren't that many Earth Wizard cards and Lightning Wizard cards, right? I think we saw this in when Rosetta came out. It's like Icelander came out, and here's Frostings, here's Aether Hails, here's Ice Bolts, which is just these Ice Wizard cards. And then Verdance comes out, and it's just Pulsing Aether. That's like the Earth Wizard card. And then Acilio comes out, and it's just Common Stormshark. That's like the Lightning Wizard card. I think that probably, to me, like made the contributed to the loss of flavor for me as well for those heroes.
That's fair. Yeah, I think that makes more sense to me in terms of like the dual class, or sorry, the class plus talent cards, rather. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess in terms of
what's your answer to this question?
Yeah, I guess in terms of what I think, I think we've got a lot of talented wizards. I think a non-talented wizard would be a nice go-to with Kano having ascended to Living Legend. Can they make that feel different to Kano? I think so. I think you can. I think you can lean into Arcane in a big way and have a different hero ability. Talking of Blaze, I don't see adult Blaze because I think there's a chance. I think Blaze might be too powerful with 40 life.
I wish. Wait, would she have 40? What's
even 34. She's 17 at young. But I have this concern that Blaze and Class Constructor might just be too powerful.
I wish they just ban Wildfire and then give us Blaze and actually give us like a wizard that does instant speed stuff.
I mean, they might just do that.
Just ban Wildfire. The card's so
I think they probably will. I would love them to see them.
Gone now.
Yeah, so. I think they probably will, honestly, because you have all these other interesting cards like Snapbacks and like Reverberates and stuff like this that, there's actually all these really interesting wizard cards that just haven't been able to be played. So I'd love to see a non-talented wizard, probably with its own specialization, a couple of other wizard cards that come with it. But there's so many interesting wizard cards out there. So yeah,
I want to play Chain Lightning and Gaze the Ages again. Like, I guess Kano did play Gaze the Ages, but in a non one turn combo sort of way. I want to play as like part of my turn to turn cycles, like Chain Lightnings and Snapbacks and Gaze the Ages and stuff. That all those feel very, very wizardy to me. I think that was really, really cool.
The only last thing I had to say was you were speaking about non-talented wizard cards. So you had Aether Hail, all these sorts of things with Frosting, Freezing Point, Ice Bolt, etc. You also do have a Heartbeat of Candlehold for Earth Wizard, lest we forget. And of course, light up the leaves. There is a couple.
Yeah.
But
yes, and I did say, once Light of the Leaves came out, I did say this does make her feel more of a wizard.
Sure.
And I do think Verdance has felt more of a wizard since Burn Bear and Light of the Leaves.
I think what is interesting as well is I think there are some wizard cards that were printed at just wizard that to me feel like they are lightning wizard or earth wizard. So in particular, I think like the sigils. I think like Sigil of Aether or what's the attack that like buffs for sigils? Like they feel so Acilio like lightning wizard coded to me, but they're obviously just wizard cards. What's it called? Glyph overlay.
Oh, wait, Glyph overlay?
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway. But just, but I think that's
oh my god!
I think part of that's a limited decision, so that the other wizard could play those cards. Honestly,
yeah. Actually, I think a lot of the attacks as well were quite limited consideration as well, right? I think if you have one hero that's pure arcane and limited, then you need to think about arcane barrier everywhere and stuff like that. 100%. And I think that was the other reason they sort of toned down the pure arcane version of these heroes.
They can do that now because they've made this commitment to not necessarily having to have limited attached to their sets, so they could make a set that doesn't worry about that. Potentially.
Yeah, but the 4 sets after Pen are all limited, so maybe not.
Let's go.
Glyph Overlay. Just real quick about that. Man, that card was such a bait because like Verdance is on the art. Like I think.
I know.
And so I remember when Verdance came out, we were doing the default Verdance thing, like what we thought was the good one, which is like very close to what it is today. It's just she actually has cards that fit in those slots now, like Everbloom and stuff, which she didn't have. And it wasn't working because she didn't have stuff like Everbloom. And we're like, oh, maybe, are we supposed to go into this like sigil thing? Because like Verdance is on the art. And then we tried this whole like Glyph Overlay build with like a bunch of sigils, and it just wasn't it either. And we're just so lost. Like, what is that? Why is she on that art? I'm quite confused.
I know.
Anyway.
That's what was available. I don't know. Or anyway,
honestly, maybe it could have been like a different card, and then they're like, okay, no, we're just changing the card. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Great question. If you want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, please do so. With that said, Pankaj, let's move on to the main topic of the pod this week. It is big changes of 2025. As you say, Pankaj, LSS, they've made a lot of changes in 2025. The game, Flesh and Blood, has adapted, has evolved, it has changed. LSS have... I got to shout out. I'm just going to, first of all, shout out to LSS for being really open about their changes as well. They've used things like Keynote, Dev Talk, articles to be, to be really transparent about why they're making changes or lessons learnt through the year, things they feel they've not done well and that they've wanted to change their approach on. This has been echoed with Living Legend, banned and restricted announcements. Listening to the community has been one of the things that they've spoken about. I do genuinely believe that they are listening to the community and trying to make changes. And I think if I flash back 2 years ago, I'll be honest, I don't think that was something that they were good at doing. I don't think they listened to the community, or at least they said they did, and I sometimes, and they might not have always. It didn't always feel like it was the thing that the players wanted. But there's been a lot of changes this year. So I know we're going to talk a lot about all of them. I was just saying we don't have the ProQuest changes on this list, so we should definitely talk about that at some point as well. But anyway, I'll let you kick us off wherever you want to start.
Well, first, I want to echo your sentiment as well for shouting out LSS for taking risks, and obviously some of these risks haven't always panned out, but a fair number of them also have. I'm glad we're doing this retrospective. Just look back at these big changes and talk about like what did pan out and what didn't. And to your point about them constantly making changes and evolving the game, I mean, already looking forward to 2026. Like, I'm thinking of like next year's version of this pod, and we already have like 3 bullet points we can put in there right now. Like, one is just the cosplay thing that we just spoke about, and then there's this entire Silver Age thing, which is another commitment they're making for 2026. On top of that, the rotation in Silver Age being given to the players, for example, like a lot of power being given to the players for that, which is a whole other rotation paradigm that they're coming into. So, to your point, yeah, they are constantly being very agile and changing a lot, and I think that is a very, very positive thing on the whole.
Even set design changes, right? In terms of now they've made this post Super Slam very clear that they are going to use... I mean, we've had supplementary sets return. So there's lots of things that we'll get to look back on, like you say. For this one, though, for 2025, Pankaj, where do you want to start?
All right, so we're going to go over 5 things, 6, I guess, if we're going to add the ProQuest changes. So I want to talk about gem packs, which I think people maybe have forgotten, but that sort of started in 2025. I think the announcement was made late 2024, but it started, the first gem pack season 1 started 2025. So that was a big change that happened this year. This year was also the first year that we saw the Player of the Year system actually pan out. Points were started being awarded like after Worlds last year, but it is the first year we've sort of seen it play out to completion. We're going to go over all the heroes that LL'd in 2025, just trip down memory lane, because I think people might have forgotten. There were 8 heroes that LL'd in 2025. If you really want, you can try and pause the video now and see whether you can list all of them. And then we're going to go over the scaling LL points, which is a system that was started about mid-2025, where heroes gain LL points according to a certain multiplier depending on their release date. And then we're going to go over the increased ban cadence. So we're sort of going in increasing order of importance, if you will, to like the CC format or like to the wider community as a whole. And yeah, last thing we'll go over is increased ban cadence. And then we should also go over the PQ changes to your point.
Yeah, if we have time.
Fit that in. Maybe just at the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's start with gym packs because that feels like the easiest and probably the shortest. Do you know what? When you said this, I was like, you're right. Gym packs did come out this year. I have a very simple take on this. I think this is an elevation of distribution of prizes at a tier 1. So you're the first way you ever come in to play an event. Hello, I want to play Flesh and Blood. I come into my local store. I play an armory. I lose a lot in the first 2 months. But maybe I get a little, random prize gym pack. Maybe then I win an armory. Eventually I get another gym pack. And before it was like, hey, you get this promo, and you'd like kind of like be like, oh, I lucky drew this random promo, or however the store did it. Maybe it was a bit battered on the side because it had been thrown around. I just think the elevation, the presentation of getting this gym pack, the feeling that players, when they get to open this and find something potentially special in those packs, the treatments of those cards, the way that they're curating exactly what the sets of each of these gym packs looks like, I think is elevation. That is the word I would use for this, and I think it has been very much a success, and I think it should continue, and I love that they've come to this conclusion, and yeah, for me, all positive. I would say I would give this if we were gonna go through this and give us a out of 10 rating, maybe I'll give this a 9 out of 10. I think this is a great change in 2025, maybe even 10 out of 10, honestly.
Tier list 2025 big changes tier list, maybe. As always. As always, Hayden, you are as eloquent as ever, talking about this being an elevation. My take was just massive W. That was my take on the gem packs. I mean, I feel like it's a bit hard to pinpoint this as like the specific reason, when obviously there's a lot of stuff around the game that's also changing. But I've definitely seen an increase. I've heard about the increase in locals showing up to my local armories, for example. And I think the vibe as well has changed a lot. So like just the other day, I was at a local, and we were playing this game, and after I beat my opponent, and we got a gem packs, and then I don't know, my opponent I think in the end went like 1-2 or 0-3, but then they pulled like the cold foil Warmonger's Diplomacy, and it was just like so awesome.
Sick.
It's so great that your record doesn't matter anymore, like the way it used to get like the cold foil, and everyone's just there to jam games, and everyone has an equal chance effectively to pull something awesome. I think that's great. I will say though, it did take a while. Gem packs 1 and 2 were kind of underwhelming. I think. I agree. Gem pack 3 was, I think, where they started to hit this stride, and I think we can definitely see it like going even better from here, like at least maintaining for gem packs 4 and whatever else happens in the future. Gem 1 and 2 were a little bit underwhelming, but
2 is okay.
Overall
2 is okay.
Okay.
2
overall big W. Yep. Definitely compared to previously. When you're talking about the old promos, oh my god, remember when you'd get like yellow Macho Grande or something when you show up to an armory and be like, what is this? Why is this here? Why? I felt like I walked away with nothing, or rather I walked away with something which I feel too bad to throw out, but also will never see the light of day again. So
I think
big W.
I think it went like this. Wait, where's my camera? Promo started about here. Pretty solid, actually, I would say. Some of the cold foils, you get the cold foil weapons.
Cold foil weapons were awesome.
How good
but
was
again,
that?
it was like you had to win the armor.
Okay, but
and maybe add a little bit of sweatiness that it didn't need.
I agree. The Texas stuff was great though. So like I have, love playing my Rhino deck with my extended art, or I guess the different treatment, like where the text boxes see through, whatever, of Wrecker Romps, Reduced to Rune Chance, like some really staple cards, right? So, and then it just went progressively downhill from there, where you're just getting, like you say, yellow Master Grandes. Honestly, some of the, I think one of the
Blessing of Aether.
There was an Earth card as well. I can't remember which one it was. One of the unplayable
Break Ground or something.
Yeah, that one or one of them. Anyway, it just dropped off. And I think as the gym packs have gone, season 1, season 2, season 3, I think they've just picked up. And Yeah, I think, like I cracked a gym pack from season 2. Admittedly not the best one. It's like Hunter's Clave. I'm like, sick. Like the reverse Hunter's Clave. Like this is cool. Like this is the kind of stuff I want.
Awesome.
It's treasure, right? Like it's actually finding something. It's cool. So
yeah, and I think it also makes you feel more okay to like bring a fun deck to your armory. Whereas previously, I think there was still a level of I do want to try and win my armory. Whereas now I'm like, I'll just bring Marlin or whatever. I'll just bring this deck I'm just brewing. I know people are like, even competitive players are like, I'm just gonna bring Lyeth to this. I don't plan to play Lyeth at a calling or something, but I was gonna bring Lyeth to my armory, and it adds a level of friendliness in a sense and just low stakes to the armory, which I think is just perfect, given how competitive the game is already and how difficult it is already. That having the lowest tier of event be not competitive, I think, is just a massive win.
Dude, Matt Dukes was playing Olympia at his local armory. Anyway,
wait, was he playing Great Axe?
Let's move on. Where are we going next?
Okay, because if it was Great Axe, then I'll be like, okay, I'm not sure if this applies to if you bring like fatigue, full fatigue to your armory. But anyway,
someone's having fun.
I'm sure. All right, next, moving on to, this was the first year of the Player of the Year system. The first year we saw it entirely pan out and come to a conclusion. And there was some concern at the beginning of this, when it was first announced, that this would just be a contest for the Brody Spurlocks of the world, right? I think that was part of the discourse that I was seeing going around when the whole World Tour point system was introduced to us. And I thought this would be a good time to just look back and think about how we feel about that now, given that discourse, and how we feel about the Player of the Year system in general. So
this is something I really wanted. I really, really, really wanted let me take a step back. Since coming into Flesh and Blood, and since coverage has gone through this elevation, but even when coverage was early on, when Brendan joined the coverage team, for instance, right? One of the things that I had spoken to him about, and I said that I was, really passionate about seeing, was more narratives, more storylines, more about the people that are playing the game. And, one of not just mine, but a lot of people's favorite things when you watch sport or you watch an esport is you attach some of the energy and the feelings that you have for the game to a team or a player. Maybe you're a Dota or a LoL watcher, and it's like, this is my team, or this is my player that I really support because I identify with their play style, for instance. Or you're a sport fan, and that particular person is someone that you really like to watch. You see them in interviews, you see their personality come out. And I think when we first started in this game, you could not get that from any player that wasn't a content creator. It was just impossible because there was no coverage of the players. And I think as we've gone, we've built some of that, which is great, right? The interviews and coverage, the way that we talk about the players, we talk about their journey, for instance. I think, we've elevated that in coverage. But the thing that was missing was, how do you identify these players as a layman? How do I look in and say, like, who are the best players in the world right now? Who are the players who are really strong this year? And the Player of the Year race is what gives you that. So to me, it's one half is for the players, for sure, and that competitive drive to say that I am the best player this year. I have been the best overall player of this year. I've traveled to events, I've applied myself, and I've won a great prize for it, and I've won notoriety. I've got an accolade, and but the other half of it is what it does for the game, what it does for how it builds up the players, the pro players in this game. It gives the watcher, the viewer, and aspiring players something to attach to and relate to. So this is something I've wanted for a very long time. I've been very passionate about us having something like this. I asked James about Player of the Year 3.5 years ago. And so that's really exciting to me. The execution itself, I think there's still improvements to be done. I think, they're making some changes this year with the seasons, which we'll look back on at the end of next year as well, which I think is potentially a good change. I still think there's something in and around that, how you recognize not just the top one or top two players, but you actually recognize that kind of swath of pro players with consistency. So yeah, I know that was long, but it's something I've been very passionate about, and I'm glad to see it, but I think there's still a bit of a journey to go on with the Player of the Year and the pro player sort of space.
I'm going to expand on two things that you said. First thing, you're talking about like what this is doing for the game and like the players and giving them something else to aspire to. And I think we saw that come to fruition, right? It wasn't like, sure, at the beginning it was just like Brody's and Michael Fung's traveling around, but because of this system, then we started seeing other players traveling around places that they wouldn't normally go. Like Jacob Clemens obviously stands out as someone who became a globetrotter because of this. So I do echo your sentiment on the positive impact this has had for the players and the game as well. And I want to expand further on your stardom part of it. We're talking about building narratives of players. I think the other thing this did, something that I'm very passionate about, is sort of building rivalries. Not like real rivalries, but I long for the time where we can talk about these players with like little rivalry things. We had that happen a little bit, like Jacob Clemens and Brody Spurlock, right? This friendly rivalry going on where they're both neck and neck, both fighting for Player of the Year. They've both been globetrotting, but you also got to talk about how they they are sharing a room together when they go travel all over the world, and they're playing together while still competing. And I just love that aspect of it as well. Like one thing that comes to mind when it comes to rivalries for me is like one narrative in a sense that's maybe popped up a little bit is like Lucas Oswald versus like Michael Hamilton. The number of times the two of them have like faced off in like top eights. Like they played the Rosetta finals, right? Lucas came out on top, but then they played the Chicago LL Calling semifinals and Michael Hamilton came out on top. I think there was another top eight they played in as well that's escaping me right now. I just want more of that. And I think Player of the Year feeds into that a little bit as well. The whole Asia Pacific region, where we had Justin Koo, Chireu, right? And like Pudding Tom all like neck and neck as well, and we get to build up these little mini contests between players, but in a scope of competitive sportsmanship as well. I thought was a big success. And to your point about the points, maybe like the allocation of points and rewarding of points maybe could use some work. I definitely agree with that as well. We're seeing indications of that coming into 2026 with the season thing, as you pointed out. And yep, I think it could be improved. But overall, again, I think this was a big success as well.
I think the qualification is the other thing as well, because you now get to a point where you're using this pro point system to effectively make sure that your swath of pro players are in the right place, the right time to an extent. So I will see how that plays out. I've got some reservations on the way that they're going to calculate those points across seasons, but we'll see how that plays out. Just quickly on the thing you said around actually you kind of followed it up. You said about APAC in terms of players that weren't traveling to start the year, won a Pro Tour, for instance, or top eight at a Pro Tour, or got a couple of calling results in a row, and all of a sudden it's like, actually, I can make a run at Player of the Year here. What I'm interested to see expand on this is how do teams play into this? It's something that I think we create as a coverage team. We focus on teams, I think, but and also players obviously want to be part of a team. It's kind of cool to be part of a team in some ways. Like people want to have that association. So I'm interested to see where that goes next, because if I think about other TCGs or where it's an individual sport, but there's a team element to it, I do think it's hard to get. It's hard to work out how you should support that from an official standpoint. So
I'm not sure if I do want that. Like, I sort of like that on coverage we go over team slides and we talk about the players that are teams and we follow track records of teams. I'm not entirely sure if I want an official system in place for teams, because I think one thing that I really appreciate, one thing that I also really like calling out on coverage and looking back at people's results is celebrating players who are not part of these established
100%.
Teams getting results, right? And I think maybe having an official system in place maybe incentivizes a lot of players.
I don't think there should be, by the
go
way.
ahead and be part of teams. And I'm kind of like, I'm not sure.
I don't think there should be. I don't think there should be an official thing.
Then I maybe misunderstood what you were talking about.
I was saying is what do you do around teams? Because what I was saying at two separate points. I think it's hard to do anything official. So do you do anything there, to your point? But what I'm saying is what happens next with teams. What I would say is something like, we don't have teams events right now. So we don't have, 3v3 Sage calling, for instance. Like, those are the things that I think are the avenues to actually have teams play into it. It's not so much this is the best team of the year or things. I don't want anything like that. Just to, I'm on board with you. I think
I misunderstood. Okay, got it. Team events.
Celebrate the individual.
Yeah.
This is an individual game. Celebrate the individual, but also I think because people have a bit of affinity. They'll be like, Value Vampires, I love those guys, or like Sunflower Samurais, right? I think they're a great example of like, they're these
Blue Pitch,
right? Like, people do have this affinity with these teams, so I do think you want to utilize that in some way, but I don't think it needs to be in an official capacity in terms of how you recognize it. So
Yeah, I think the way we do it in coverage now is, I think, a
Really
great
good.
balance of it, where we do recognize it, but there's no... It's just to, like, track them and acknowledge that these are teams these players test together and stuff, but not really... they get some reward if a bunch of the players do well or something.
100%. Just give me a team event, though. Just give me some more 3v3. Give me 3v3 Sage calling first half of next year. Let's go. Come on, LSS. You can do it. I believe in you. Let's move on.
That would be awesome. Heroes that LL'd in 2025. All right. Now's the time to pause the video and see if we can name all 8 of them. But I'm going to list them in reverse order. So starting the hero that LL'd most recently. That was Kano. Before that, it was Azalea. Before that, it was Love of Your Life, Hayden. It was -IE. And before that, kind of Love of My Life, kind of post-Icelander, was New. And I'm still struggling to find a deck post-New, I feel like. Before that was Aurora. And then Enigma and Zen together. So with that, all of MST. And then before that was Viserai, the first hero to LL this year. So this was something we sort of anticipated at the end of 2024 already. Looking at the Living Legend leaderboard at the end of 2024, there were so many of these heroes that were very near the threshold. And we knew that at the start of the year with RTN season, ProQuest season, we're going to have a bunch of heroes LL. And that's sort of what happened at the start of the year, right? With Viserai, Zen, Enigma, Aurora, New, all sort of LLing across those events. And I just want to, this is just an observation. I think even with that, even with the number of heroes at the end of 2024 that were at the precipice of LLing, we still had more heroes enter the CC metagame this year than heroes that left. We had 10 new heroes this year. Well, oh wait, no, did we have 11? Okay, Hunted was 4 heroes, not 3 if you count Slippy. So yeah, Hunter was 4, High Seas was 3, and then Super Slam was 4. So we had 11 new heroes out of this
When did
year.
Yao
and
come
only
out?
8 left. I think that was last year.
Okay.
I feel like Yar's been around
Yeah.
more than a year. Armory Deck Origins, right? Yeah, I think it was 2024. So there's an observation. We still had more heroes enter than leave, despite the sort of explosive number of LLs we had to start this year. But yeah, these 8 heroes left. Any of them, I don't know, bring out any nostalgia, any feelings in you, Hayden?
So I got 2 things to hit on. One, I have a question for you, a bit of a fun question, and then remind me so I don't forget this. But I want to come back to the thought around 8 out versus 11 in, and because I want to tie that specifically to a conversation we had earlier in the year around hero bloat. But before I talk about that, fun question for you, Pankaj. Of these 8 heroes, which hero do you think that I registered the most times for a tier 3 or tier 4 event? So not ProQuest or Road to Nationals, but Calling or Pro Tour or Worlds.
I know it's not -IE because every time I call you a mechanologist player, you'll be like, "Whoa, I registered -IE once."
One time.
I think it was Enigma, right?
It was Enigma. Viserai, people might think as well. Viserai, I've also registered, I think just my nationals at a tier 3 or 4 event. I might have played it for another event, maybe a Calling, but Enigma, I'm pretty sure is 3 times. So Kano twice, World Champs, and PT1. So fun little fact there for you. I don't play a lot of Callings. I haven't played a lot of Callings because I haven't traveled necessarily for a lot of Callings. But I think Dromar is the hero I've registered the most times for a tier 3 or tier 4. Yours is definitely New.
I mean, again, I don't play any tier 4s anymore, so it's kind of just tier 3s and below.
I think you played it for 2
New or
Callings, right?
Icelander?
No, of this list though.
Of this list? Oh, this list is New. Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about this 8 out versus 11 in, because I think a lot of conversation earlier in the year was so many heroes in this game, and I think I'd have to go and look now, but there's over 35 and probably close to 40 now. A quick check, but I'm not going to do it because I'm pretty sure it's around there. But one of the things we said was, is this game getting bloated with heroes? Is there too much choice, etc., etc., etc.? What I would say is that I think the game has felt different since that point, where I think that yes, actually a lot more heroes feel playable, which is interesting, which might make you think, wow, there is too many heroes in this game, but it doesn't feel that way. And one of the things that I think is contributing to this is that all 8 of these heroes, naturally, they're living legend, so they've been competitive heroes, right? They've been, and I would say the hero that has been the least competitive of these list of heroes would be -IE or maybe Azalea, right? That'd be, and then Kano, those 3. The other 5 were meta players, right? It's all significantly. So these 8 go out. The 11 that we've had come in are not all meta players. Right, and actually very few of them are. So we can actually go through the list, right? Arachne Marionette is currently if we go through by set, is currently a meta player. Fang and Slippy has also been a meta player at times, but is not right now. Fang and what's the other hero in that set?
Syndra.
Obviously
Syndra.
Syndra. Obviously Syndra. So 2. We're at 2. Fang has not really been. And maybe you can say Slippy.
3, right? If you count Slippy.
If you count Slippy, 3.
Slippy as
sure,
like
we can count Slippy.
So 2.5 maybe.
We'll say 3. We'll say 3. It was one of the best decks in the format for a number of months. Then you go to High Seas next, right?
Yep.
1. Obviously.
Gravy.
And then
oh my god. No, wait, hold on. We forgot about Valda. Valda came out of Mastery Pack, so actually 12 new heroes.
I thought there was a Guardian. I thought we were missing a Guardian.
Doesn't
change.
You're right.
Doesn't change this conversation though. 4 heroes, and then we go to this most recent set to Super Slam, and maybe Underhanded Cheat is like fringe playable, but it's not.
He's top 8 at 2 callings in a row now.
He has.
Seattle and Hong Kong. So.
I think he's in the conversation with Fang.
I'd put him there.
I think he's in the conversation with Fang of that next level. So 5 true meta forces, 3 meta players, probably of the level of an Underhanded Cheat potentially in the form of like maybe Dash AE, but Azalea and Kano are probably a little bit higher than that. So you've got 5 max, maybe 4 that have come in and 8 that have come out. Really, I think what I'm trying to get to is the fact that yes, there was this conversation around hero bloat, and yes, more heroes are being printed than of Living Legend, and we knew this landslide of Living Legend was going to come, but they were 4 really impactful heroes at the end of the day. So I do think actually when you look at it and the way it feels is it doesn't feel like there's all these heroes have come in and the game is just so saturated and all these new heroes that you've got to consider. It actually feels like, yes, there's a lot of playable heroes. They're all now been around for a period of time for the most part, except for a couple of heroes from Super Slam. And of course Gravy. I do think it's actually quite healthy, the Living Legend piece.
Yeah, I guess I think there maybe is a little bit of a dissonance of how we are defining the word bloat. I think when the heroes are CC relevant, that's not bloat. To me, when I look at Betsy
sure.
and like Olympia, like that's bloat. Like you know what I mean? It's the heroes that are irrelevant and seem to have been forgotten and like not getting support. Like I put Riptide.
Yeah, I think I'm using bloat the wrong way. I think you're right. It's not bloat. It's hero fatigue. It's too many heroes, too much choice. I guess at the higher level.
Like Betsy and Olympia just don't need to exist, for example. They're just like there. Like Riptide, hopefully gets more support. But at the same time, to sort of give them credit here, I think they are working towards. I think Expansion Slot has done a lot to fix this idea of bloat, right? So, for example, Huntsman is now. I mean, I would say he's still weaker, but he's not a complete joke, right? He's is showing up. He gets somewhat of a positive win rate. And he's sort of creeping towards maybe becoming more and more playable. So I'll say that's doing a lot to address the bloat, the expansion slot stuff. Now, whether a hero like Betsy or Olympia can come out of their hole ever, I don't know. Or even Tough Nut, I don't know. To me, those are the sort of heroes I would define as bloat. Not, there's this fringe playable deck like RKO. That's not bloat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, fair.
Cool. Next, all right, maybe into something that's a little more meaty / controversial. I think so far there's been a whole bunch of W's we've been discussing. Scaling LL points. That started with Aurora's rapid ascension to LL, which for very, very good reasons was not something that was positive for the game. A lot of new players came in to buy and bought the Aurora Armory deck, and then in a month or two couldn't play the hero anymore. This was a system they introduced after that, where in the first year of a hero's legality, when they get LL points, they get it at 0.5x the rate. In the second year of legality, they get it at 1x the rate, and after that, they get it at 1.5x the rate. This has been active since, I think, around May.
Yeah, May 20th, I think.
Just a couple of notes on this system. Without this system, Syndra would have LL'd by now, so within her first year, if my math is correct. And Gravy would be way much higher than he currently is. So I guess, to start us off, how are we feeling about this? Do you think this is working as intended? Does it need to exist, or just any general thoughts about this?
Just to clarify one point on the Syndra piece, there is more Living Legend points though, right? There's been more callings this year. There is more Living Legend points available. So I just want to point out that it's not exactly like for like on the Aurora piece, and I do think that part of this Living Legend change, and there's been many Living Legend changes, which I'll get to in a second. Part of this Living Legend change was obviously understanding the points that they were accruing in terms of the additional points available through additional events and things like that, because they made a change last year in terms of the set points for a season, which I think was a good change. But that doesn't apply for callings and things like that necessarily, where Syndra's obviously had good success. So I do, this is the other thing, is the Living Legend points that each hero has are not equal, because some of those points have been accrued under different systems, so it's really hard to judge, I think, sometimes about the equitability of Living Legend points for each hero. But anyway, regardless of all that, yes, Syndra would have accrued points faster, would be close to Living Legend at this point, but that wasn't under the system. It's a different system. So I like the idea of the system. I think, they should want to more aggressively Living Legend heroes that are older, even if they have a spike in power or they get a card printed that helps them, whatever it might be. I think that is fine. Do I love the 0.5 for new heroes? I mean, I think the system works in terms of like what they're trying to achieve. What this also has to go hand in hand with is the ban and restricted, right? And balancing using the ban and restricted alongside the scaling system with new heroes, so that, to your point, a new hero comes in, maybe it does have success through a season, so it takes a big chunk of points, but then isn't necessarily as impactful in the following season. I think is still important. Have they done it with Syndra? I mean, I feel like Syndra's been in a pretty good place. I think they could have banned Wrath of Retribution before Worlds, like post the ProQuest season, but I would say between that ProQuest season and after the initial run of Syndra, I mean, I think the hero's been really good for the game. So I don't think, since this point system's been introduced, I don't think it has failed. There's nothing I point to and go, don't love this. Gravy might be the one where I'd say that's the one that's knocking on the door of that. And we both have a lot of, more so you than me, but we both have a lot of problems with Gravy across the board that aren't just related to the Living Legend point system.
I'm so glad you brought up the increased ban cadence thing, because that's our next topic.
Yeah, we'll get into
I want to talk about how much we've actually felt that as well. I'll say my thoughts on the scaling LL system. Firstly, I do echo your point about the 1.5x thing perhaps being something that's overall good, because it also goes back to our whole bloat thing as well, right? I think if Dash IE, for example, is still legal right now, is a bit does she need to be? And maybe you could see some of the older heroes also rotate out, especially as design changes and design philosophies change as well, right? I think some of these older heroes do have a dated feel to them, or be this is old design principles, and seeing them move a little bit quicker maybe is fine. The 0.5 thing, that to me, it feels almost antithetical to the idea of the increased ban cadence. It feels to me like the increased ban cadence should be the thing that prevents a rapid ascension rather than an artificial deflation of LL points. And to your point about increased LL points being available now, sort of across the year, I feel like maybe a more player-centric version of this is just increase the LL point threshold. Right?
Yeah,
if there's more LL points going around, you can increase the LL point threshold. Because I think my big problem of the 0.5 thing, and actually this also applies to a 1.5 thing, is that the amount of competitive play, just a raw value in terms of duration that I can get from a hero, is for some reason dependent on when they released versus when they actually matter. So for example, I'm coping on Marlin, right? She's not playable right now. Eventually, ideally, she gets a couple more harpoons, gets a blue, she's playable. But then the duration of competitive play I have with that hero is for some reason shorter than the Gravy players, because they had this whole competitive season where they were getting points at half the rate rather than 1x the rate. But then when I get to play Marlin, I only get to play her for 1 year. But then Gravy players get to play him for 1.5 years. And I'm just why is this the case? It just feels a little bit feel bad unless you are a player of the hero that is right out of the gate, the chosen one, the strong one. And I don't really and I feel if you just made a blanket, all heroes now need 1.5k LL points, or whatever the number is, right? Whoever does the math, make it equivalent. Then at least I don't feel punished for choosing the hero that isn't strong out the gate. I still feel okay, when her time comes, I get to play her for the same length of time as I would have if I chose Gravy, for example. That's a part of me that just feels a little bit bad.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing I would caveat that with is that it also depends how competitive that hero is. For instance, you've had some heroes that have been So, like, if we take a look at who's living legend this year, for instance, Dash IE has actually had been really competitive for long stretches of time, right? It was, but it was. But also not as competitive as some other decks, right? So it didn't accrue points but also it's so hard to say that because the systems have just not been like for like. Anyway, I agree with you. I think maybe this isn't, it's so hard to get right. The living legend, it's been changed so many times because it is so hard to get right. This is the system they're with now. At the end of the day, I'm personally of the opinion of yep, this is the system. Let's work with it and let's make sure that everything around it supports that system, because it's really hard to get it right. One thing I would say as well is that I think, just on the ban cadence, use the bans to support the living legend points rather than the 0.5. One thing I would say though is that you do have to also support the players in terms of practicality. So for instance, if you're 2 weeks into a 4-week ProQuest season and I'm a player and I've been right, I'm playing this deck for the ProQuest season, 2 weeks in my deck gets banned. It's not great. So I do think there's also, you can go the other side of the bad, it's overpowering and it dominates a format, all these things. I understand. But there's always going to be two different sides to these conversations, I think.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
It's hard.
Cool. I think if there's nothing else on that, should we move on and talk about the increased cadence of bans?
Yeah. Last thing I'll say is I'm interested to see where Living Legend points goes. We're not done with Living Legend points changes.
Oh, for sure. And I think, I feel like we sort of see parts of this as well, right? Now for example, they're talking about Blitz now, which obviously not really a supported format anymore, but they're Blitz is they sort of undone the whole L thing. I think Sage is a very, very clear indicator of them trying things that aren't LL, for rotation, right? They're Sage is nope, you've got players voting for bans and then seasonal sort of hero legality stuff.
Yeah.
It's clear that they are sort of experimenting with other forms of rotation, and I agree with you. I think LL potentially is going to see even more changes, but I will say I do like that they are committed to it. I think it is a very cool system. It is very flavorful, and it's so unique to Flesh and Blood that I love that they haven't given up on it. Even though obviously it has had its issues, had its rough points. Some would argue, sort of like I am, the current 0.5 LL thing isn't exactly a great thing as well. But overall, I'm glad that the LL system is still the rotation form that they're going for this game, for CC.
Do you know what's funny is I think me and you are about the same place on this. It's just that I think you have more of a passion of articulating some of the challenges with the system, whereas I'm I've gone through so many changes as a competitive player that I just live with it. And maybe that's a sign of should I be happy just living with it? But I think, to your point, I also believe the system is such a great system that I am willing to be a bit more flexible on my expectations, I think. And still be happy, because I do appreciate how difficult it is to get the system right when the game is growing. That is the other thing that people have to consider is there's more ProQuest, there's more callings, there's all these other things to contend with. So
yeah, I agree with that. Also, this is very novel, right? There's
100%.
Sort of a whole bunch of things you can learn from other TCGs, but this Living Legend thing is. Now, it's we're the first to do it, and so obviously it's going to have rough edges. Obviously it's going to go through iterations, and sometimes parts of the iterations maybe you're not going to be the happiest with. But to your point, there's going to be two sides to it. There's as with most social systems, it's difficult to find one thing that everyone's going to be happy with. And I think so far, just the iterations that they're going through, I do think it is improving. Sure. And maybe we're just a few steps away from what most people can reasonably be happy with.
What next?
Increased cadence of bans. So this was, I think, a commitment they made. I don't remember whether they made this at the end of 2024 or early 2025, but they said that they're going to ban more frequently and have a stronger pulse on the format and shake things up more often than they used to. And I was reflecting on this, and I remember thinking I didn't quite feel it. And I'm not entirely sure whether you agree with this, but then so I started doing some digging, obviously, in preparation for the pod. And I have some stats, so let's talk about the BNRs that happened in 2024 versus 2025. So just look at the FabTCG website, you search scheduled BNR. There were 5 BNRs in 2024. Okay. Technically there were 6, but one of them was just the emergency Aether Vein ban in LL for Verdance, because she was doing fire breathing broken stuff. So I'm not really counting that. There were 5 BNRs in 2024, and out of these 5, One of them was no changes. And one of them was what I'd consider just like a preemptive ban. It was the Crown of Seeds and Berserk ban when there was no Earth Hero in the format, and KOs weren't even playing Berserk. It was just like a preemptive, we're doing this for design space in the future, we're getting rid of these. So I would say that in 2024, there were 3 like CC relevant BNRs. It was the Bonds, Yellow, Blue, and ban that happened in July. And then there was a book burning, that was obviously a massive one, in September. And then there was a High Octane and CYB Blue ban in November. Those are the 3 CC relevant bans in 2024. In 2025, there were 8 announcements. 2 of them were purely for LL. That was like CYB, Zephany, and Warmongers. And then the other one was like the Deadwood Dirge Rosetta that happened just before Worlds. And then, so out of the 6 remaining ones, 2 of them were no changes. And then one of them was the Needle ban before Hunted came out, which I would also consider that's like a preemptive thing, right? That is, again, it was like before Hunted, let's get rid of Needles, and 2 were no changes. So in terms of CC, again, in 2025, there were 3 CC relevant BNRs in 2025. It was CYB Germinate Scepter in May. There was the Bonds Tipple Plume in September. And then there was one that we just had, which is Brand Chart Spinneret Rootbound. And I think, looking back at this, I think that's why I was like, wait, I didn't really feel the increased ban cadence, I feel like, at least when it comes to CC. Because if you look at it, both years had like 3 CC relevant BNRs. I think there was the point, like in June, for example, like there was no changes. Was it? I think it was June. It was like before Pro Tour Singapore, where I was like, I feel like Gravy should definitely have a hit. Again, you can talk about bias or whatever, but I think it was clear at that point that the hero was outperforming what it should, and there was like no changes there, which to me was a bit puzzling. There was like another no changes. I think there was no changes like March, which I think made sense because heroes were LLing left and right every other week, and that was like enough churn going on there that one no changes makes sense. But the rest of it, I was just like, I'm not entirely sure if I felt the increased ban cadence in 2025. How do you feel about that, Hayden?
So I did take a look. They committed to this around the same time as the changes to the Living Legend point system. So it was actually middle of the year, May time.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, well then that actually helps a lot.
Post London.
Yeah, it was post Aurora thing. Okay,
Yeah.
then that makes sense.
So I think if it's half a year so far, I'd say. So I would judge them more on it this year, personally. But what I would say is, as well, some of the things that I do think there were some opportune times for bans this year. I think heading into Pro Tour London, for instance. I think heading into Pro Tour Singapore.
True.
For instance, yeah. I think they could have. So
that was the March no changes, right? It was like Aurora and Enigma.
Yeah. So which was prior to this change they made, which is fine. I think if I compare the second half of last year to the second half of this year, so for instance, the book banning as well, to me, is it's a very different thing to me. Like, to me, that was a complete shift in direction of the game. But if I think about the High Octane ban, for instance, in November, the second half of this year, particularly post the September ban, I would say, the format's been really healthy for the most part. So I think they've not needed to step in. So they could have, right? I think with their change of their perspective of cadence, I think they could have, they needed to. Would they have? Hard to know, right? Because to your point, should they have done that before Singapore? So I think there's still lessons to be learned. I'll judge them on it this year. I'll take a bit of a, I think they did a good enough job this year, but there was probably still some opportunity for improvement. Let's see how we go in 2026. One thing probably just the last thing from me that I want to point out on this one is that there's also a thing around cadence versus the, for lack of a better term, heavy-handedness on the ban as well. So how much of it is timing and when they choose to do the cadence of those bans versus how much of it is making bans being on the sort of safer side of things, for instance. And I think that is actually, so if I think about the brand, the chart, the Spinneret Rootbound, that's more on the heavy-handed side. Even actually, I would say, when we sat down in September, we said, I think I basically called it, I think you were there as well, Bonds, Tipple, Plume. We were like, these are the cards. Even when we spoke, we were like, old LSS, would they have banned Plume? I don't know. I don't know if they would have. Would they have banned Bonds, or would they have just touched Gravy Bones? I think the old LSS view might have been just a touch Tipple. So I think there is a cadence piece that's speculation from my point of view, right? But I think there is a piece of cadence. Let's see what they do in 2026. But also I do think there has been a piece of just how deep they go on these bans, or how preemptively they go on these bans versus previously.
I think you're right. I think I need to call myself out here and just say I think I'm still just salty that Gravy wasn't hit earlier than September. I think that's just literally what it is. I think Gravy should have
And you're
been
right,
hit
though.
way earlier than
You're
that,
right.
and I'm just being salty about that. But yeah, to your point, I think looking at this December ban, I feel like old LSS would have said no changes because it was a healthy meta. It was a really healthy meta. They called it out themselves, right? In the dev talk, that like this is probably one of the healthiest metas a TCG can have, with 3 decks sort of doing Ring Around the Roses, but in Marinettes coming in towards the end as well, before the bans happen. It was an amazing meta, and all LSS probably would have said no changes, but increased ban cadence LSS was like, hey, let's shake things up, take away Spin Red's Root Bounce brand and chart. So I think to your point, yes, this is again something that started the second half of this year, really, after the Aurora thing, and it seems like they are actually living up to that.
I give them like a 7.5, 8 out of 10. I do think it is working, but also I'm giving them a bit of benefit of the doubt of that they've applied themselves, or they've sort of said they're going to go forward with the system, and we've seen it for the most part. Although I do sit with you of like, should we have done something prior to in June? Because you had national season, they went to Singapore. Like there was this opportune time to say, right, nationals finishes, here's the ban and restricted. You could have even announced it a week before the end of nationals so that people had more time, but that the last week of nationals wasn't impacted by it, for instance. So I am with you on that one. I do think, I think at the time, I was pretty clear on like, I think there's 2 playable decks and they're close, and I do still believe that. But is that a good meta? I mean, especially when we've been spoiled for choice at this end of year with such a healthy meta, could we have moved towards something more like that sooner?
I'm glad you actually brought up the BNR like timing as well, because I think that is tangential to this change. But I think something that's relevant as these increased cadence of bans goes is I do think they could maybe improve their scheduling for it. Like it doesn't need to be like every 2 months by the calendar year. And I think if it had, maybe it pays a little bit more respect to these tier 4 events. Like I think the fact that the November BNR was scheduled for like 10 days before Worlds is a little bit of a miss. And you're increasing the cadence, which is nice.
Yeah.
But if it could be scheduled according to like not having players needing to scramble or not knowing what the meta is like 10 days before tier 4, I think that I feel like there should be a way to have both, where you increase the cadence, but there's also enough of a leeway before a major event.
Yeah. Nice. I want to call something out just before we get to this last point and then wrap up the pod, is that when we jumped on to record, Pankaj said to me, do you think we've got enough to talk about? And I said, dude, we always go long. Like, less is more with us. And I knew this would be the case, that we would crack the hour mark easily through this main topic. Plus, of course, come on, Cookout, great conversation. Great question from Ryan there. Just funny, Pankaj. Let's end on ProQuest changes quickly. I think we've spoken about this enough, honestly. Like, we've kind of said our opinion, I think, for the most part, which is, I'm not going to speak for you, Pankaj, I don't want to, but I feel like we mostly both agree that we thought this was a good change and that it's had the intended outcome. Yes, there's some collateral damage to an extent of the way people feel about not being able to play the game, but I think for the most part, this has had the intended effect, and PQ numbers are booming, so...
Yeah, I mean, when you said ProQuest changes, you're talking about that you can't play in a ProQuest.
Sorry, yes.
1-1, right?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. So I think, I think you are like more positive on it than I am. I'm like close to, I'm basically neutral. I'm like
You're just
neutral
sick of it.
/ slightly positive. I'm like kind of indifferent,
Sure.
I feel like. I'm neutral and like slightly positive. I'd be like, oh, if you ask me, like, if you like make me make a decision, keep it or lose it, I'll be like, okay, keep it.
Yeah,
'cause I'm,
same.
like, slightly positive.
I am same on that.
But I'm like so awfully neutral on this whole thing. I'm just like, I just don't fully get why it's blown up to me. I just feel like it's so few people on either side actually got affected by this. Like, I don't know how many people are changing their decisions to attend because they're like, oh, that player won last week, so it means they won't be here this week to spike it so I can show up and play. I don't know who's actually making a decision like that. And then on the other side also, there's only so many winners in a ProQuest season. You have like, I don't know, like in my region, I'm pretty fortunate. I have like 5 or 6. But most regions have like 2 or 3. So tell me across the season, by the time your third ProQuest comes around, 2 of your players can't play. I'm like, okay, like how much discussion are we gonna have on this? It's like, okay, man.
Yeah. I think I sit with you mostly. What I would say, what pushed me over the being indifferent sort of borderline was just hearing people talk about it in person at events and be like, I'm really excited to be here this weekend. I saw my friend got their invite last weekend, and then one of the best players in our region also got it on the Sunday. I'm feeling really good about my chances of like winning a Pro Quest this weekend. I'm actually going to go, and I actually heard this from a couple people. I'm going to go next weekend to this one that's an hour away. I haven't been to this tour before, but I'm going to go check it out, and I'm feeling good. And honestly, to your point of how many people are saying, "Oh, I'm going to go now because these people aren't going to be there." I think it's a bit more than you think, from anecdotally. But anyway, it probably tipped me over the edge from being like, you know what, I don't really care about this, to actually, I'm seeing the energy of some of these players who are excited about potentially qualifying for their first PT. And also, if you're a major grinder or you're a pro player in this game, your qualifications are the least of your worry, honestly. So I'm just like, on the flip side of things, I think it's good.
I feel like I have. For me, I think what leans me over to the positive end is I'm so glad I'm not seeing those tweets anymore of people being like, I won like 4 gold foils this season. I'm like, okay, dude. Just like, all right, let's keep the system just purely so I don't need to see those tweets anymore.
Done. Deal. Right. Anything else in this retrospective? This is wrapping up our final retrospective for 2025 in Flesh and Blood. I want to ask you, Pankaj, you've been a little bit mixed on this year with some of the set releases, haven't been your favorite, some of the heroes. Not to say that you've been negative or anything like that. Not the case at all. But I think through times in these retrospectives or through the year, both of us have expressed maybe things not being what we would have liked to have seen, for instance. So I'm just curious, with that all said and done, how do you rate this year against your other years in Flesh and Blood in terms of your experience, the way that it has unfolded, the way that the formats have unfolded, the way that, I guess just the year has been for Flesh and Blood, with everything in consideration, from sets to the changes to the events that have been held to the game itself. How do you rank it up against other years?
Okay, so I want to give one that's maybe more objective, and then there's one that's a bit more personal. And I think my personal one is like a little bit lower, but a big part of this, and this is something that many players have felt, right? Like when you're hero LLs and then you are searching for a home and you haven't found that home yet, the game sort of feels like it's hard to be as motivated, and you just feel a little bit like you're not having as much fun as you used to. So like that kind of happened to me like halfway through the year, right? After New LL'd, I still feel I haven't really found my home. I really wanted Marlin to be, because it's like, that's my style of deck, right? It was like Icelander and New, like a blue-based mid-rangey disruptive deck. Like that's what I want to play, and I feel I don't really have that right now. So for me personally, that was that, and then obviously there was a whole Gravy thing, which happened right after New LL as well. So, it was a bit of a, like, I'm already feeling like I don't have a home, and then Gravy comes out and ruins my day. So I feel like on that front, it's like, but again, that's like so personal, right? Where it's just like, the
game is personal,
maybe
though.
On that aspect, it's like not like super great, but overall, I mean, I still feel like, and I look back on this year as a whole, I'm like, Hunted was so awesome. I love like Hunted from like a CC perspective and like what it did. I think High Seas Limited was absolutely amazing. I think getting to the Super Slime World Premiere was also amazing. So on that front, there was still a whole bunch of personal stuff where I was like, I really enjoyed about this year. Obviously, I mean, that's why I keep doing what we do, right? That's why we're here Christmas week, actually like making a pod. It's because there's still so much love for the game. So, on the personal end, maybe a little bit low. Again, I don't like have a home right now, so maybe I still don't want to give it a negative though. I still feel like it's like a 6 or a 7 at least. And then on an objective front, I think what this year did for the game, like just looking at PQ attendance, looking at Armory attendance, looking at people's like general excitement for the game, Pro Tour attendance. Freaking London was such a massive Pro Tour,
500
like
plus
500 something players. Yeah. Our world premieres are like popping off and everything. I feel like as a whole, objectively for Flesh and Blood, this has been like an amazing year. And people are hyped for 2026. Silver Age like is getting a lot of interest. People are already exploring the format, despite it not even being like development ready, as like the developers said. So, I mean, on the whole, I want to give this year like a 9 out of 10. And it's just me personally, like still like a 7 out of 10. I feel like, because I don't know. It's like Flesh and Blood is just fun, and the community is awesome, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Where are you at?
I'm very similar. I think that the growth of this game and what's happening in this game and the way it looks for the future is so exciting to me. I think that is the biggest tick. Personally, I mean, I took a step back at points in this year in Flesh and Blood. I didn't play my national championship, for instance, because I wanted to do something else at that time, which, I'm also grateful that I did that because I had more energy going into Singapore because of that. I would say that I've not felt as much affinity with certain heroes this year, to your point as well. So that's been harder from a competitive standpoint. I've also just had less time to prepare competitively. So, and I've done a bit of a difference where London, I obviously casted, played Singapore, didn't go to Worlds this year. So it's been a bit of a different year for me, I would say. And it's also been one of the first years, or the past, I guess, 18 months have been, where I've not been particularly successful in this game. But
you top aided like the calling.
I top
and
aided the
slipping.
calling this year, but that's in previous years it might have been.
For you, you're like, yeah, come on. I'm a nationals winner. All I do now is top aid calling.
I just think as a competitive player though, that's what you do benchmark your years against, whether that's for good or bad, right? Like if I look back at last year, I've been like, right, calling top 8, multiple calling top 16s and cashes, nationals top 4. You sort of go through these things. But this year, actually, to be fair, I've played a PT and 2 callings. I've not played a lot of Flesh and Blood this year, so I don't think I can be too. I think 3 callings, so I can't be super disappointed with it. But my energy is high for next year, so that's exciting.
So, were you rating it out of 10?
I would give it like a 7.5. Solid. I think my personal year, because I've not been able to play as much, haven't been in the form I've wanted to, is maybe like a 5 or a 6, but the actual energy for the game and what I'm seeing, I think is like more like an 8.59. So yeah, maybe an 8. I also didn't love high seas, apart from the limited aspect. Anyway,
I'm glad we're on the same page on that.
I know. Great conversation, Pankaj. Honestly, I think your call to do these retrospectives has been fun for us. I hope it's been interesting for our listeners and our audience. And that wraps up our 2025. Pankaj, it's been amazing to have you. First of all, I want to say thank you for being with me on the podcast for a full year in 2025 after joining us October last year. I'm looking forward to 2026. There'll be more from me and Pankaj, of course, but there'll also be a lot more Flesh and Blood. You'll see us around at events through the year. And enjoy your holidays, Christmas if you celebrate, any other holidays that you celebrate, New Year's, and I guess Pankaj, that's it. We'll see everyone in 2026.
Well, 1 second. You can't thank me and not give me the opportunity to thank you back. So, of course, thank you again for bringing me on a year and a half ago at this point. Almost a year and a half ago at this point. And yeah, this has been doing a full year of Arsenal Pass has been absolutely amazing. Chatting with you every week has been great. I've been always looked forward to it. I know we like butt heads a bunch sometimes, but I think we usually do it very in a candid way, and it's been a big positive of my life this year for sure.
100%. I've gained a friend, so that's a big part of it as well. Speaking of,
I thought we were just colleagues. Okay, never mind.
All right, well, one-sided friendships are fine. We have to go and record a gameplay because instead of doing a podcast for the patrons this month, we're going to do a gameplay while we talk. So if you're not an Arsenal Pass patron, join and go check that out. Otherwise, we'll see you in 2026. This has been episode 245 of Arsenal Pass. Thank you for another amazing year to all our Arsenal Pass family out there. We'll see you next time.